If you could get out of debt, you'd have some money. If you didn't have any payments, you'd have some money. And people look at me with two different problems with that. One is they get all sophisticated and academic. They start talking about, well, Dave, there's good debt. There's good debt, and Wall Street has proven that recently. Dave, debt is a tool to be used for your good. And I used to believe that garbage too. I was in college and they used to teach us this stuff about leverage and internal rates of return and net present values. And I'm not against education. I mean, my financial education is part of where I am now. Academia is a good thing. But you can't believe everything you hear to the extent it doesn't line up with this. Because, I got to thinking, the borrower is truly slave to the lender. We're not kidding about that. God's truth says that every single time. And I got to thinking about it, and I'm thinking, who was it taught me that borrowing money was good? This was my finance professor in college who was broke. A broke finance professor is like a shop teacher with missing fingers. You see, if you want to win, you ought to try finding some people that are winning and emulate or mimic what they are doing. If you hire a personal trainer and you walk in the first morning and your personal trainer is 400 pounds, we got a problem. If you've written a book on marriage and you've been married 14 times, bless your heart, I hope this one sticks, but I don't want to read your book. Forbes magazine has the 400 wealthiest people in North America that it publishes every year. 67% of them, 7 out of 10 of them, are first generation rich. They started with nothing, became wealthy. When they surveyed the wealthiest people in North America, not your broke brother-in-law with an opinion, but the 400 wealthiest people in North America, and they asked them what the most important key to becoming wealthy was, 75% of them said getting out of debt and staying out of debt. Unless you have the money, that by definition is you can't afford it. Because when you go into debt, then you're hooked to those payments. Now you're a slave. Jesus said it's tough to serve two masters. So what are we going to do about it? How are we going to get out? Well, we want to talk about breaking the bondage of debt and how you really do it in a real practical, hands-on, real-world application. See, the truth is that if you spread a lie or a myth often enough, loud enough, and with enough sophistication, eventually people will begin to believe it. And they will tell other people about the lie. And it's not that they meant to lie, they just believed a lie and they spread it. See, what has happened with this is debt has been marketed to us so aggressively, so thoroughly, with such sophistication and such manipulation for so long that Americans and people all around the world have begun to believe all deep down within their heart that they will never financially be somebody unless they use debt to do it. Debt is the path to prosperity. If you want you a good car, son, you got to build your credit. You'll never be anybody unless you build your credit. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. By the way, 80% of 90 days, same as cash, doesn't pay off in 90 days, and transfers to high-interest loans at your local finance company, 24 to 38%, with a prepayment penalty just to go ahead and kick you one more time to remind you how dumb you were. Most people don't pay it off in 90 days. And if you don't pay it off in 90 days, by the way, the 90 days isn't free either. They backcharge you through that for the interest. It's how it works. It's a game. It's called fishing. Right? That's the deal. You know what happens when broke people get a house? They get broker. That's why they call them real estate brokers. A house is not a blessing when you're broke. It'll take you apart and take you down. So if you want to get a house, do some stuff about money that the Bible says so you're not broke anymore, and then go get you a house. But I didn't do that. I've been married about 15 minutes. People are in my living room going, you need to get a house. Get a house, get a house, get a house, get a house. And so we went and found a house with nothing down because that's how much we had to put down. They called it creative financing, which if you look it up in the Greek means too broke to buy a house. And so we bought a house about 3 blocks over from where I grew up. Larry Burkett used to say we spend the first 5 to 7 years of our marriage trying to attain the same standard of living as our parents. Only it took them 35 years to get there. I lived in the same neighborhood as mom and dad, had a better car than mom and dad, and for sure had a better TV and stereo system than mom and dad. 52% of the marriages end in divorce in North America today. Of those that divorce, the number one cause is money fights and money problems. Of those that divorce in the first 7 years of marriage, 90% say money problem. Young marriages are falling apart everywhere. You know why? When you're like this, your leg gets tired. Well, the first thing was I was reading through Proverbs. If you read Proverbs over and over and over again, you get a master's degree in finance. It's amazing. There's 31 Proverbs, so you can read one a day. Just get you a little spiritual one a day. And so I'm doing my little spiritual one a day one morning, and I've read through this a bazillion times, and I've heard this. People call in on my radio show. They're getting out of debt, and they say, I'm getting out of debt. They have this thing in their voice that tells me that they're going to make it. And then the others they call in, they're like, well, dude, sort of kind of like maybe this strategy, and maybe it'll work sort of maybe. So what sort of do you do? I'm like, well, I can't help you. Call me back. I didn't know what it was, but I said, like, call me back when you're mad or something, you know? You got to get that thing going, you know? And I couldn't put my finger on it, and I was reading through Scripture one morning, and I hit Proverbs 6, 1 through 7. And it says, if you've signed surety, my son, which is Old English Bible talk for got yourself in debt. If you've gotten yourself in debt, do this. Now, I teach people how to get out of debt, and I wanted to get out of debt, and so I saw a do this, and my little ears went, whoa, whoa, whoa. Because I had a spiritual experience a few years ago. I discovered God is smarter than me. And when he says, you're here and you don't want to be here, so do this, I'm listening for what comes after that. That's a big deal. If you're in debt, biblically, do this. Give no sleep to your eyes, no slumber to your eyelids, and deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, a bird from the hand of the fowler. And I promise you, it's not very reverent, but I promise you, I went, great, gazelles. What am I going to do with gazelles? Great little animal metaphor, talk about it in Sunday school. But, I mean, how are you going to talk to people about gazelles and death? This doesn't. That night, God answered my prayer. I was scanning the channels, and I hit the Discovery Channel. And there on the Discovery Channel, there was the gazelles. They were out there gazelling around. And what were they doing? Well, I said, well, you know, here it is. There's the gazelles. And you know the gazelles were not there by themselves, right? You know somebody else was around, right? Looking for lunch in all the right places. And gazelles, they have a cheetah detector right behind their ear. When they see a cheetah, they go like, uh-oh, cheetah, run! Now, the Discovery Channel said that the cheetah is the fastest animal on dry land. He goes from 0 to 47 miles an hour in 4 leaps. Now, it's starting to come clear to me. Here's how you get out of debt. You deliver yourself like the gazelle from the hand of the hunter. The primary predator of the gazelle is the cheetah. Here's how you get out of debt. List all of your debts, smallest to largest. You pay minimum payments on everything but the little one, and you attack the little one regardless of the interest rate. My medical bills don't have any interest on them. Shut up and pay off the smallest one. Why shouldn't we pay off the highest interest rate first? Wouldn't that be mathematically correct? Darling, if we were doing math, we wouldn't have credit card debt. We teach people the very first thing they do with money, what we call baby step 1, is save $1,000. As fast as you can, get a little bit of a savings account. Because if you just get in there and you start cutting up your credit cards and you have no money and your tire is flat, save some money. That's the first step. The next step is you got to quit borrowing more money. You can't get out of a hole while you dig out the bottom. So you got to say, that's it, no matter what happens. No matter what the situation, no matter how desperate or how intriguing or what the big opportunity is, I am not borrowing money anymore. I had a friend of mine decided he wasn't borrowing money anymore. 3 weeks later, his car engine blew up. He had no money. He had to have the car to get to work. He called me, he said, what do you do? I said, I don't know what you do. But I'll tell you what you got to do. This is a decision. Right now, you're deciding how you're going to live the rest of your life. Right now. This is a hinge pin moment. The guy at his church, he was telling him what was going on. The guy at his church goes, man, I got an old pickup back here. It's not anything fancy, but you could drive it for a few weeks. He drove that old pickup for 3 months, saved up, paid cash for a little car. The guy has a pile of money now. That was just a few years ago. But he made a decision in that moment and allowed one of God's people to show up. God showing up through his people, go figure, to help him out and walk him through this thing. Quit borrowing more money. Now, I don't want to get all religious or crazy on you, but, it turns out God's your provider. I know that sounds kind of bizarre sometimes when you say it. It sounds like, some kind of preacher guy or something. But he really is your provider. It really is where it comes from. And sometimes he provides you with 2 hands and a brain to work. Those who don't work don't eat. I read that. The diligent prosper, not the lazy at home watching TV. That it's in there. I mean, he shows you. I mean, it's not like he's just going to roast the duck and throw it in your back window. You got to go kill it and cook it, But God is your provider. That's how this stuff works.